When people have a lot of people-pleasing tendencies, usually they want to be someone who is calm. They want to be someone who is confident. They really care what people think. But the ironic thing is that when you have people-pleasing tendencies, people don't respect you as much. They can just walk all over you.
Hannah Hotline, how can I redirect your call? Oh, hello. Hi, I have a really big problem at
Dear
work.
Hannah Hotline.
I don't really like my boss.
I'm really attracted to the guy I work with, but
I just want to say no, but I say
it's
yes.
my self-esteem, you know? Maybe it's burnout. This is the operator putting you through now.
Hey hotties, welcome back to another episode of Hannah Hotline. Super excited to get into this episode with you today. We have got a juicy email, so let's just hop right in. Dear Hannah, it's 7:03 p.m. and my phone is lighting up again. I'm a senior sales manager in my mid-30s at a global tech company. On paper, everything is great. Great title, great pay, high-profile work. My boss is a director and has a just get it done attitude. His version of normal is late nights, weekend emails, and quick check-ins that never stay quick. Yikes. Somehow, I've become one of his main people. Almost every weeknight at 7 p.m., he calls just to run through a few things. Sometimes he's at his desk, sometimes he's driving home, and I'm his unofficial commute buddy. These calls usually last 35 to 40 minutes. They rarely are true emergencies, more of thinking out loud or tying things off that could wait until morning. My days already start early, and by 7 p.m., I'm exhausted. I recently had a health scare that forced me to actually see a doctor, and now I've got a diagnosis that means I'm supposed to be sleeping more, managing stress, and not living on adrenaline. I promised myself I'd slow down. Instead, I find myself staring at my buzzing phone, half angry, half scared to ignore it. I worry that if I say I'm not available after 6:30 most nights, I'll be seen as less committed. My last performance review literally praised my responsiveness in evenings and weekends. Yikes. And I know how people are talked about when they don't go the extra mile. I've tried small things, saying I have a personal commitment or delaying a call, but I usually cave. I also noticed that when I do try to assert myself, I immediately undercut it with, sorry, this probably sounds silly, or I'm just ranting. So my questions are, how do I set a real boundary around these nightly calls without tanking my reputation or relationship with my boss? What's the line between being a team player and sacrificing myself? And how do I stop apologizing every time I ask for something basic as an evening to myself? Or am I asking for too much? Love on call at 7 p.m. Okay, this is a real juicy one. And this is one that I get, I would say not frequently, but kind of frequently enough that it's definitely an issue. And if your boss is making a repeated habit of calling you at 7 p.m., then it is a really big issue, especially if you've got a health scare and a recent diagnosis by your doctor. First, if I were coaching you, I would run you through the main question that I would have is this a gravity problem, a problem that can't really be changed, or is it something that you actually do have control over? So I love this dynamic. I've spoken about it before on the podcast. So it's from Dave Evans and Bill Burnett. They're Stanford researchers, and they look at certain circumstances and situations, and they actually call them gravity problems. So what that means is that this is a circumstance that cannot be changed or moved. So really, if I were coaching you, what I would be trying to find out is, are the calls at 7 p.m. in expectation of your role? Are they in expectation of your roles and responsibilities? Is your boss calling his other direct reports and alternating nights? Does, Mike get calls at 8 p.m. or Sally get calls at 9 p.m.? Is that something that is to do with the job and that you need to do in order to keep your job? Or is this a behavioral pattern that both you and he have gotten into because you haven't been bold enough or brave enough or had the skills to actually set a boundary and say, okay, this isn't going to work for me anymore? So there are a few ways to understand that. Is it something where your peers, so other sales managers in your same position, are they expected to be on call? Is this something where everyone else is also taking calls? If it's not, that's almost easier to solve because that means that it's a relational dynamic that's happening between you and your boss. So then you can kind of take steps to figure out from there what you can do. So first you need to realize, is it you or is it the organization? Now, when I'm coaching people, let's say that are in law or that are in management consulting or that are in finance and work on Wall Street, and they have a problem with the long hours. Part of it is that's actually a gravity problem. You are expected to have long hours in your role. If you aren't going to answer calls at 10 p.m., they're probably going to tell you to fuck off and that you need to be on call during that time. However, given this emailer being a sales leader at a global tech company, I would say this is not really expectation of your role. Maybe this is potentially seasonal if it's end of quarter or depending on how you're quoted, end of month, or even if it's the end of financial year. You've got to get some deals done. The director needs to be updated on the forecasts. You have a large deal coming in for the region. Yes, those one-off calls may be expected. But if it's a just kind of nightly shooting the shit call, your wife knows you or his wife knows you by name because, you know, you're his commute buddy or whatever, then some level setting and some expectation needs to be done there. So that's kind of the first one. Then let's look at, you know, what happens if you do nothing versus if you do something. So let's look at, first of all, you doing nothing. What's the situation here? The situation is that you've recently had a health scare. Your doctor has told you that you need to lower your stress levels, lower your cortisol levels. You probably need to relax. So by you doing nothing, you're probably going to then decrease your health in some way. Like you're then at higher risk for something else that's going to happen to you. You could potentially get even sicker. You could then have another diagnosis. You could have an autoimmune. You could be diagnosed with cancer. I've coached people through all of these things who have not necessarily taken their health seriously and not regulated their stress, and not saying that it is their fault. Of course, it's 100% not. But if you've got early warning signs, then you need to actually say and be really committed to what are the actions that I'm going to take to look after my health. So if you're doing nothing in this scenario, I would ask yourself, what am I sacrificing long term? Then as well, really looking at going back to your core values. What are your values? Are your values health? Are your values family? I was coaching someone in a really similar situation, and her top value is family. And she realized that she was having to sacrifice a lot of her family time for these 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. calls. And once we realized that taking these calls was contrary to her value system, then she was actually able to put the boundary in place. So look at what are the consequences here if you do nothing. What does this health diagnosis look like if you don't lower your stress levels? And really play the tape forward on, if I do nothing, how much sicker am I going to be? What is this going to look like in terms of my energy levels? What is this going to look like longer term? I don't know if you're male or female in this role, but you have to think of fertility costs potentially. Do you want children? How do things look in that realm? Then you want to look at, okay, how would you feel setting a boundary? So I have a hunch that given what you're writing in with, I feel like there are some people-pleasing tendencies going on here. And because you said, okay, especially in the email when you're saying, I always notice that when I do try to assert myself, I immediately undercut it with, sorry, this probably sounds silly, or I'm just ranting. All right, make a commitment to yourself. You're actually going to stop that shit right now. Stop saying these little qualifying things. And this could be very hard, but I do want you to note when it is that you're saying these things, just make a little note. If you are saying it, make a note, make a tally. How many times do I undercut myself or undermine myself? What does that say about my confidence? So I have a feeling that you do have strong people-pleasing tendencies here, and you probably haven't really made a firm commitment. So if you say, I'm available these nights, but then you do cave when your boss calls you, I would really then try reiterating this commitment and saying, okay, you might want to start slow here, which is by saying, I'm not available on Mondays or Wednesdays. I've got a personal commitment. You don't really need to go into that. You can just keep it at that. And that means that when he calls you on Mondays and Wednesdays, you don't answer. And this could be really, really tough. Like I know that this could be like, you could just be hearing this right now and being like squirming in your seat, but you don't answer. And then also very importantly, the next day you don't say, oh, I'm really sorry I didn't pick up. You can just say, hey, I noticed I missed your call. What's up? How can we talk about it? And then you're not going to be expected to be on calls all the time. And his dynamic with you is likely going to change. Now, a few different things could happen here. Your boss could accept this. Your boss could stop calling you, or some retaliation could happen where potentially you are not favored anymore. If you are favored, you are taken off projects, whatever that is, and just notice if any retaliation happens if you're not available right now. I would also document everything, whether that be, and this isn't to say that you need to go to HR, but I think as a best practice when you're trying to change these behaviors, just document everything. Time he called, your response, also understanding that if this isn't an expectation of your role, and depending on what country you work in or what culture you work in, really note that, okay, I'm not expected to do this. I actually want my personal time. I want my leisure time. I want my decompression time. What is happening after I'm not doing that? So those are a few things that you can do. Now, what I really also want you to look at is like focusing on the identity aspect of it, is like what type of person do you want to be, and also who do you admire? When people have a lot of people-pleasing tendencies, usually they want to be someone who is calm. They want to be someone who is confident. They really care what people think. But the ironic thing is that when you have people-pleasing tendencies, people don't respect you as much. They think that you are someone that they can just walk all over you. They can expect you to do things at the drop of a hat. Maybe you're the one that is always available. You're the one that can really take care of the team, or you're the one that's always on call. You're really expected to be that person because you have a reputation. But you may want to be someone that's calm. You may want to be someone that's really confident. You may want to be someone that's self-assured. And you might not know how to be that person yet, but start to note, okay, who do I know? Whether this is a person that you know directly, like that you work with on your team, or whether this is a person, maybe a celebrity in a culture or a podcaster that you listen to. If they were to get these calls at 7 p.m., how would they act? How would they behave? Would they be picking it up? And you want to really, this is called like getting an expander. And I teach this in level 2 of the life and work transformation, which is you may not have these internal parts that are parts of yourself that are super calm and super confident. You may have parts of yourself that people please, but we want to actually create new parts of yourself. And if you don't have access to that, you look at, are there role models? And you want to think in these situations, how would that person behave? I really had to do this. I mean, this is an area of my life that I had to do in dating, because I was just dating really avoidant, unavailable men. I was like just a moth to a flame. And that was a lot of my stuff too, that I was just like, absolutely loved that type of behavior. So what I did is I had a friend who was always super confident in dating. She was always just would take no shit. And I remember just thinking, how would Kate respond to this? What would she say? Like, what would she say in this scenario? And that really helped me because I didn't have access to those tools and resources until I did a shit ton of therapy. But you will start to think, okay, how would this person respond in that? And that way you can really start to embed those thoughts and behaviors. And just know that this can change over time. And also, if there is retaliation that's happening, or if your boss says you do need to be online all the time, I do actually need to be speaking to you at 7 p.m., that's then a different conversation, which is, does this role and does this company and does working with this certain manager align with my greater goals and with my ideal life? Am I going to have to sacrifice my health? Is that really worth it to you longer term? If you will have to sacrifice your health, it may be, but you're writing into me. So I think that it probably isn't something that you want to do. And you mentioned your health for a real reason. So if this is a circumstance, which is a gravity problem, then you either have to change your relationship with it, which is accept this dynamic, or you have to then change your mind and move on to new things. And that could be a longer term process, but you want to think about, what are the values in your life? What's the type of person that you want to be? What are the actions and behaviors that that person takes? And start doing that and moving toward. Also, if this is, this high performing people pleaser, I love to call them the insecure superstars or the overachieving people pleasers. If you want to address this, this is exactly what we cover in the life and work transformation. The next round is starting January 30th. I would highly encourage everyone who's listening to this call, who's nodding along, to apply to the program. The link is in the show notes. Book in a call with me. We can discuss if it works for you, because know that this stuff can change. And also, you don't have to be living in this constant fight, flight, fight, people-pleasing response where you're not really supported. So thank you, listener. Thank you, Hannah Hottie, for writing in. I will see you on Hannah Hotline in 2 weeks, and I'll chat to you guys soon.
Hannah Hotline. Email her and you'll be fine.
Hotline.
Hannah Hotline is sponsored by Dominique Jingles, where quirky, clever and corporate branding is reimagined. DM Dominique on Instagram at Dominique Jingles or email dominiqueenglish04@gmail.com.